Our next presenter is Laurel Weldon from the Department of Political Science at Simon Fraser University. Laurel, Distinguished Full Professor of Political Science, is internationally acclaimed for her work on gender politics and policy, with expertise in cross-national analysis of women's rights, social movements, and violence against women. She has acted as a consultant for the United Nations and the World Bank. Her books and articles have won many awards as she served as Vice Provost at Purdue University in the United States of America.
Thanks for having me here today. I appreciate this opportunity to present my research. It's a pleasure and an honor to be in such great company. Before talking about my most recent project, I wanted to first give a little outline of my overall research agenda. And these books that I'm showing you here represent my kind of lifelong work on structural inequality, thinking about real societal inequality, as well as kind of diversity and how that shapes public policy and law. And my work has mostly focused on how this works out in the area of gender, but I also look at dimensions of class and religion and race as well in my work, as you'll see. The broader themes of this work focus on the relationship between civil society, especially social movements, and law and public policy. And specifically, some of the themes that the work takes up are questions of representation, whether marginalized groups can be represented in democracies and how they are best represented, and how civil society plays a role in that process, and also how they can forge solidarity in the context of historical relations of domination. Statistical analysis of, I do this research mainly through empirical analysis of global data sets that I've built, original global data sets on movements and public policy. My most recent book, entitled The Logics of Gender Justice, A Global Analysis of Women's Rights, written with Mala Tun, takes up the question of comparative analysis of women's rights and argues that gender justice is multidimensional. And fundamentally what this means is that there's not one story about women's rights. There's not one reason why states adopt policies that further feminist ends or feminist public policies. In fact, political dynamics vary across types of issues. And we show this in the book by looking at a range of sex equality issues. We look at our framework. We not only document this kind of cross-issue variation, we also seek to explain it, and we offer an original framework for why and how the dynamics of policy change or policy stasis vary across issues. And we argue that this centers on whether the issue primarily raises questions only of gender status or also of class politics and of religious politics. And for each type of issue, the set of political actors and institutions that shapes outcomes differs. And we show this using a statistical analysis of data on 70 countries from 1975 to 2005, and we look at 7 different issue areas, including violence against women, family law, parental leave and childcare, employment status at work, reproduction and contraception. Depending on how you slice that, that looks like about 7 issues. And what we find is that women's rights is not a single basket of issues, as I mentioned, that we need to understand each type of issue on its own terms in order to get a deeper insight into those issues. And class and religion define distinct dimensions of gender politics that we have to understand if we want to confront the full range of gender issues. And women's rights share many things, but women's rights are not all the same. My recent project on feminist mobilization and economic empowerment builds on this research and offers new evidence of impact. This project looks at the impact of feminism on women's economic empowerment and involves the creation of an original database on feminist movements in 126 countries from 1975 to 2015. The project offers new evidence that feminist organizing advances women's rights and economic well-being in areas as diverse as employment, land rights, banking, sexual harassment, support for care work, and that includes both paid and unpaid domestic work. The project develops a new measure of feminist movements called the Feminist Mobilization Index, ranging from 0 at the low end to 3 at the high end. We use this new measure to track the global growth of feminist mobilization across the globe. As you can see, feminist mobilization is changing over time. It's growing and spreading, becoming more prevalent. But what this disguises in some ways when you look at individual countries and regions is that feminist movements in some countries have stayed relatively strong over this period. Others have had seen an increase in feminist mobilization, while in third set of contexts, feminist mobilization has declined in these instances. And this is important for us for understanding about how to respond in the current challenging times for feminist mobilization when there's been so much backlash. We think our project will speak to these questions. The most recent the most recent set of kind of questions that I'm working on are a set of research questions I'm working on with a collaborative on diversity and inclusion in social movements. And this project is seeking to illuminate the pathways by which diverse social groups can forge solidarity in the context of historical relations of domination, of conflict, where groups have been discriminated against. Historically, how can they cooperate with those who historically discriminated against them? And one part of this project involves looking at the Black Lives Matter movement and the Say Her Name campaign and exploring how intersectional solidarity strengthens movements for social justice, looking at big data sets of Twitter data. So I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk about my research today and to thank my family and my dear friends, especially my husband, Aaron Hoffman, my parents, and my children and siblings for all their support that allowed me to get to be here today. Thank you.